We are recording.
Awesome. Welcome, everyone. And it is good to see you on this wet Thursday where we're at here. And I'm Karen Solis, and my co host today is.
I am Laney Simpson, and I am the English Learner Director in Burke County Public Schools. And as Karen shared, I am pretty much in the mountainous part of the state or into the foothills. And we are happy to have you rejoin us, or if you are joining us for the first time, I know Kevin is. We're glad you're here, and we are looking forward to sharing with you Dr. Calderon's uh, writing piece of the Excel literacy framework.
Awesome. So, in the chat, if you would please introduce yourself and share an experience with partner reading and summarization that you tried in the classroom. Last week, we did the peer summaries when students read aloud with each other in pairs, but then take it one step deeper, which is so powerful, and summarize with each other what they have read. Was anyone able to actually try this strategy out this past week? If you would, please let us know in the chat, and or you can unmute.
Or if you are planning to try it next week and you're writing that into your lesson plans, we'd love to hear about that too. Let's
Can
see.
y'all hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Hi,
Yes.
Kevin.
Hey, good afternoon. Yeah, I'm Kevin Lane. I'm a new teacher at Freedom High School. And I actually just started doing the partner reading today. So I modeled
Awesome.
it yesterday, and they're still getting used to it. Um I saw some progress with them actually reading out loud to each other. I need to get them to understand the summarizing part a little more. They are able to summarize when I come by and kind of ask them like certain questions and I kind of probe them. But
Mhm.
to get them to do it on them by themselves, I assume I need to do more modeling and just more practice. But it seems
You're
very interesting.
you're spot on, Kevin. Modeling and practicing is the key for learning summarization. It it really does take some time.
Mhm.
What grades do you have, Kevin?
I think I have every grade represented in my class.
Oh, wow. Wow. Yeah, if you could, even though this is your first session with us, we had everybody, we have a digital journal that you'll be able to make a copy of. And so you'll have access to those first two presentations that we already did. I would highly recommend that you go to last week's session on reading, and it will give you some ideas and even some bookmarks that Lanny helped create with some sentence starters on what to give the students the verbiage to help them come up with those summaries.
Okay, I
And of
appreciate
course, in
that.
the youngest grades, it's retelling, but as they get older, they should be able to summarize and paraphrase what they just read. So yeah, it is a good skill. And so when students are able to do that, they take their comprehension into much, much deeper levels
Mm.
as they unpack their text with each other, which then will allow them as they go solo to be able to do that when they're faced with those end of year EOGs passages or whatever they're doing um, later in life. So awesome. Thanks
Well,
for
thank
sharing.
you. Yeah.
Anyone else?
Annette says she was doing check-ins,
Awesome.
and we certainly understand
We
that.
understand that.
Yes, we do.
All
Hey.
right. Okay, Lisa said she loves partner reading and has used variations of the reading based on the time that we have in class. That's excellent. A lot of classrooms are doing the partner reading I've seen, but honestly, it's that next step that changes the game. It is the total game changer. When you have your students summarizing the text, that is what is different than the typical partner reading. So
Exactly, Karen, and it builds comprehension so deeply. And I was in a classroom
mhm.
today, and they were partner reading, but did not do the summarizing. And afterwards, I was able to debrief with the teacher and share with her regarding the summarization, and she was so excited at the prospect of. Having a new tool for her toolkit.
And it's free. Oh my gosh, you don't have to
Yeah.
prepare for it. You don't have to do anything. All you do is go around and facilitate and make sure they are doing that. And like Kevin said, we just got to model it. Just model it because they don't know that wiring. They don't have that wiring for how to unpack that text and be able to do that. So we just have to give them the words. We have to model so that those synapses will just flow and they will be able to map right on how to do that. And powerful, powerful,
Mhm.
powerful.
Mhm.
All righty. Well, thank you all for sharing. One of the things that we would like to make sure that you do is realize that we do have the ELD standards and the supporting resources, and we have that linked into today's presentation. Make sure that as we're going through these presentations, that you see how you can connect everything that we are talking about fits beautifully with our ELD standard course of study. All righty. And our objectives today are going to learn and experience these writing strategies. I can't wait. I am so excited about today's session. So, we're going to be doing the write around that leads to the read around. Again, that writing and reading connection. And then ratiocination, cut and grow, a raft, and a rip and write. Your students are going to love to write, and you are going to love to see how excited they are about writing because I, you're just going to have to wait and see. It's awesome. Okay, now,
All right.
here we go.
And Karen alluded to earlier our digital learning journal that we created for you with regard to the Excel framework, where we have tips and tricks and the bookmark template for partner reading and summarizing. And we also have some pages devoted to writing, which we will get into today. If you notice on the front of the journal, down in the bottom left corner, you will see the links. These are the presentations that we shared earlier for our first one, vocabulary session, then reading, and then finally today is writing. So I believe I'm dropping this link into the chat. Kevin, this will ask you to make a copy of the journal so that you have your own digital learning journal. And I believe everybody else who is with us today has already created their own copy of the digital learning journal. Kevin, if you'll just unmute or give us a thumbs up or drop in the chat that you were able to click on the link and create your own copy of the digital learning journal.
Yes, thank you. I was able to make a copy.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Perfect.
Okay. All right. So I want you to take a moment and read this quote about writing that was published in a policy brief by the National Council of Teachers of English. Okay. So, one thing I want to remind us of is that writing is no longer tested. We no longer have the fourth grade, seventh grade, and 10th grade writing test if you're a veteran teacher like we are and remember those tests. Um, but it is still very important for students to excel at this important skill, as it opens many doors. Therefore,
Okay.
writing can act as a gatekeeper because those with weak writing skills face limitations on what they can achieve in schooling and in the world of work. So, how important is it to make sure our students are able to write well? If you want to unmute or put in the chat your thoughts, okay? Daria says, as an ESL student, you have to score well on the writing test to exit. Exactly, Daria. Um, ESL teachers, we all know that writing is often the sticking point for students to be able to get that 4.8 overall composite. It accounts for 35% of that overall composite score. So it is a heavy hitter in terms of
Yes.
contributing to that composite score. And it is something that we as EL teachers all strive for, is to get our kiddos over the hump. And absolutely, writing on access is so important in order to exit. Annette says, wow.
It's true because we just said, that the writing is no longer tested, but really for our L's it is.
For our else it
Um,
is, right. For
yeah,
Renegade, writing is
yeah,
not tested anymore, but you're right. It is for our kids for MLs. And Annette, reading is also weighted 35%, the same as writing, and speaking and listening are each weighted 15% of the overall composite, with the theory that literacy skills are the greatest predictor of academic achievement. Therefore, reading and writing are weighted heavier on the overall access composite. Yeah, you betcha.
Can I comment for a second? Just a thought.
Yes. Mhm.
Again, coming from the content classroom as an ELA teacher, I, and I'm just going to be ugly for a second. That is infuriating to me because I know what I did as an ELA teacher, trying to make sure I incorporated things. And we all know we've shifted and jiggled, because as a veteran teacher, I remember those writing tests, those little gateways at fourth and seventh and so on.
Oh,
And
yes.
that
yes,
was
yep.
was a national thing. It's,
Yes.
that's the piece. And I look at it, I'm like, that's just not fair. I look at our kids that are not our EL kids in that classroom and go, their skills are just as bad in writing as they are if they were an EL kid. But
Yeah,
sorry,
it's
you're
true.
giving me information today that just grinds my gears.
Yeah. Well, Annette, we're also giving you a tool today to
Oh yeah,
help
yeah.
with
No,
writing
don't get
for
me wrong.
all
Don't get me wrong.
kids.
But it's just one that I'm just like,
Oh, I know.
and this is my first year doing just this exclusively EL.
Yeah,
And so I'm like, I try to learn as much as I can so I can go forward and benefit my kids and not what I know, but like it's like, okay, if I know that 35% of the test is this, then I really know there's certain pieces I need to work on differently compared to other things. So,
absolutely.
okay.
But
Absolutely.
stronger
Thank you for
readers
this
make
information.
stronger writers.
Yeah.
hmm And stronger readers make stronger writers. So the more that those connections are made, and you'll see with the strategies we're presenting today, you'll see how that goes. And then, of course, as you are able to share with classroom teachers, then I mean, it will just build everybody's capacity. It really does.
I'm going to jump in for one quick second. Definitely sharing with a classroom teacher because as the
hmm
content area teacher that shifted, I have worked with the ELs as a content teacher for almost 20 years. And so that would be something that would have been nice to know because I would have handled things
Indeed.
a little differently. I mean, there's
Mhm.
things I did, but that would definitely been handled differently with those kids.
Well, we hope that
Awesome.
we will
Well,
be providing you a tool today, Annette, and all of you that speaks to writing for all kids because we don't know what kind of writing task and genres will face them in the future because our world is evolving so rapidly. But we can give them these writing skills to carry forward into the future.
right. It's so important, as we saw in the previous slides. And writing is the most difficult domain for most MLs and their teachers. Um, when you have now, there's always exceptions to everything, but for most of the MLs, it is their hardest domain to exit out of, and they need to develop those writing skills for each content area, not just ELA, the math, the science, as they learn, comprehend, and apply content area concepts. And they are learning academic language while also learning the vocabulary, the mechanics, the genres, editing. So they've got so much going on when they're just trying to learn the basics. And when they come in at different grade levels, it's just a real struggle. So that's why this framework and these strategies are so impactful. And that's why we're so excited to share them today. Okay, just a quick note that as students are in elementary school and they're starting out, there's a heavy emphasis on the narrative and the explain and inform, and then a slight emphasis on argumentative. But as students go and grow through the school system, they actually have a higher emphasis on argumentative and the explain and inform, and then a lower emphasis on narrative. And I think it's one of the most pedagogically sound practices that we have in our standards, because what teenager doesn't like to argue, right? So that's how I remember it.
And so as Karen has shared about the genres of writing, it brings to mind the four key language uses, which it dovetails beautifully into the key language uses. So when you think about the various types of texts across the content areas and how they fit into language genre families, and we've talked about that in our previous sessions of narrate, generally having to do with short stories, novels, historical accounts, biographies, think social studies and English language arts. Inform, think science, think classifying reports. Explain, we often think mathematics. And then, of course, argue crosses many content areas and it is an important genre of writing. So, as we think about the key language uses, let's take a look at the emphasis on narrative writing and informing in the early grades. It mirrors beautifully the emphasis on narrative writing and writing to inform. So let's take a brief look at kindergarten. You'll see narrate is most prominent in social and instructional language and the language of language arts. Those are the dark closed in circles, and you'll see the vertical box for narrate. And then when we move to inform, that's a biggie in kindergarten. And children are learning the world in kindergarten. And so writing to inform is huge in this grade level. And then finally, you'll see argue is only most prominent in social and instructional language for kindergarten. So this is where kinders are going to be writing, expressing their likes and their dislikes um, as a precursor to formal arguing. So writing mirrors beautifully the key language use emphasis across the grade levels. So let's move up and look at the prominent key language uses in grades 4, 5, and see how it dovetails with the emphasis on writing. And so you will see, sorry, there we go. All right. And so you're going to see while narrate is most prominent in social and instructional and language of language arts, again, explain also becomes more prominent in grades 4 through 5. And then let's look at argue. Woo, argue is a biggie. You can see you've got all the most prominent, argue is most prominent in all content areas for grades 4 through 5. And this dovetails beautifully with writing opinion pieces, writing narratives that develop real or imagined experiences, and then explanatory writing, um, writing to examine a topic and convey ideas and information clearly. So those are all writing standards that I just hit on for grade 4, and you just see how it beautifully mirrors the key language uses.
I'm sorry, can I just mention something?
Sure, Daria.
When I was looking at that, it's very deceiving because when we see blank, we think that it's absent there, and not many people. Well, at least I didn't read the what's said on the very bottom, and on the very bottom it says that the blank means present. So if you go to the previous slide where you would going through different. Yeah, that one. So whenever we see the
Right.
blank, it's I used to think that that means it's not there because
Didn't
that's how
exist.
you imagine the blank, but it's
Mhm.
actually it's present. It's just not
Right.
prominent. So you still have to work on all those narrate in science, and you can even do narrate in mathematics. You know, there are ways to do that. It's just not as prominent as, let's say, narrate in ELA. So it's
Right.
just a mistake that I made, and I wanted to mention it.
Well, I thank you for pointing that out. That is an
Mhm.
excellent point. And one thing I will remind us of that language expectations are written for most prominent key uses in a grade span in a content area. So if you see the black closed in circle, you're going to be able to go into the standards document and find associated language expectations within that content area and that key language use. But I know what you mean, Daria. That made me do a double take as well. So I'm so grateful you pointed that out to everyone.
Mhm.
Okay. So we just want to remind you, and I'm sure you've certainly found this in your own practice. Um, telling is not teaching. Teachers have to be very explicit and systematic with writing instruction, and it is spiral. And it's not a linear process, and we have to model and do think alouds so that students understand the writing process, and do shared writing as well, writing with partners, until students get to the place where they can write independently.
Awesome. So, what we would like to share now is an overview of the Excel strategies that we think are going to just really make your students excited about writing. The write around, read around, and the ratiocination, the raft, and the rip and write. So, let's get started. First of all, the write around is in the classroom, and students work in teams of 3 to 4. Each student clears their workspace, nothing on the desk, and each student has one piece of paper and a pen or a pencil. Okay, very important. Everybody's accountable and participating. Then the students will write a question or a sentence starter at the top of their paper. So everybody's going to be starting with the same sentence starter about the content. Then they're going to finish that prompt with one sentence. They're going to have their ending punctuation, and then everyone, like musical chairs, except it's going to be musical paper. They're going to pass their paper to the right. Then they're going to read what that previous person wrote, and then they're going to add a sentence of their own to that paper. Then they're going to pass the paper again, and they're going to have to start at the top and read what the others have written and add a sentence as well, all about whatever content you have been teaching, so that they will continue this process until the time is up. Now, you want to remind them that they're going to write about the topic using as many tier 1, 2, 3 words as possible. So whether you have those as table tents on the desk and you've got that vocabulary, or maybe you have it on your board or written on a whiteboard in the room somewhere so that they can refer to it, and then they're going to be diving back into the content one more time in their unit of study with writing about and enhancing their knowledge depth of this topic. Then after they do that, let's say they've written for 8 to 10 minutes, then, and you'll do that, they may only do 5 minutes at first, the first time they go through. And then you can extend it for 15 minutes, depending on your age. You know your students. Then they're going to stop. You've called time, and they're going to do a read around. Well, what's a read around? With the read around, they're going to each be holding that piece of paper, right? And they're going to read over silently what they have been adding to, whatever paper they're holding. Then they're going to take turns, and each person in that small group of 3 to 4 is going to read aloud the narrative that they are holding to their team. They're going to select the one that they like the best. Now, everybody has contributed, so there's no writer's block. Everybody's had that access to the vocabulary, so they're all writing about that vocabulary, and you can include sequential language like moreover, additionally, and all that wonderful academic language, tier 2 words. And then they're going to select again that one that they like. Then they're going to revise it. So when they revise, they're going to add a catchy, creative title. They're going to add that powerful ending. And then they're going to, together with their small group, add any tier 2 or tier 3 words where appropriate, and prepare to share out. Okay, students are so excited about this.
Oh,
Here are
and
some examples.
yeah, and so this is an example of how you can scaffold right around for
Mhm.
kiddos as young as kindergartners. So in their kindergarten class, students are comparing characteristics of animals that make them alike or different from other animals. Their teacher used the model of a koala bear to describe characteristics in terms of the animal's structure and basic needs. And this is coming straight out of their science standards. So the teacher modeled for the students. The koala bear is gray. The koala bear lives in trees. The koala bear eats green leaves. And you can see that the teacher has built the sentences for them. Yep, thank you, Karen, using word cards. So students then, with the support of that model, are adding to or extending the narrative with the teacher's help, using the cards to help build pattern sentences about the koala bear. At the end, each student will read the paper in front of them, and that may be with support of the teacher. And then they may also revise using the COPS approach of capitalization, organization, punctuation, and spelling, depending on where they are developmentally. But we just wanted to share with you some scaffolds for how you can make Right Around accessible to kindergartners and actually see a really neat example. We have another example to show you. And again, you can see Sally from Dr. Seuss, and students simply extended and connected the narrative by passing the paper. She is a girl. She is looking. Sally is sitting on a chair. Sally has a brother. Sally likes the color pink. So kindergartners did really well connecting the narrative after having had a read aloud of the Dr. Seuss book.
I love this. I just think that's great. Okay, so we are going to have an opportunity for you to experience a Right Around virtually. So this is going to look a little different since we're not together in a session, sad face, but we want you to still have the opportunity to experience a Right Around. So this is how we're going to do this in a breakout group. Instead of having 3 or 4 in your group, we'll just have 2. We'll have a partner A and a partner B, and you will determine who you are. And then the sentence starter has already been provided for you at the top of your paper. We'll share that. You're going to complete the sentence. Now, because we're using a Google Doc framework, you'll be able to read easily what they wrote, and then you'll be able to add a sentence. So then you're going to read what was written and then elaborate on the previous sentence with a sentence of your own and go back and forth. We're going to do this for 7 minutes. All right. Now, your goal is to be able to write using as many tier 1, 2, and 3 words as possible. Now, again, because we would expect just nothing but the best scaffolding from our teachers, we would give you sentence table tents, or we'd have that posted on the board, what words we want you to use. But we're going to just say you are adults, you're using your background knowledge and the articles on the dreams that you remember. You can do this. Okay. So then in your breakout, this is what you'll see. Now, if you go to breakout room 1, you will be team 1. Whatever breakout room you're invited to, that's your team. So you'll just find the slide when we drop the link into the chat, and you will go to that slide. Okay. Then you will, here we go. Partner A will finish the sentence over here, and partner B will start with the one on the right. Most recently, I dreamed about. They both have the same sentence starter to start with. Now, notice this is not based solely on the article. This is something to enhance your knowledge about the topic itself. There's no right or wrong here. Okay, so again, you're going to add your name to the top of the slide and determine who is partner A and who is partner B. You're going to have that sentence starter, complete the sentence, read what your partner wrote, add a sentence, have fun with it, read what was written, elaborate on the previous sentence with a sentence of your own, and you're going to continue for about 7 minutes. Any questions before we put you in breakout rooms?
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out, after I finish the sentence, then I read the partner B's sentence and then I add. And then I go
Exactly.
back to my sentence, see what the partner B added. Okay. So is it supposed to be something cohesive? Is it kind of like we're working on a dream? Yeah. So it's kind of
Yeah.
elaborating and creating like adventure in the dream.
It
It
can
can be
be.
whatever,
Right.
but
And
yes.
Daria, you're right about it needs to connect with the previous
Mhm.
sentence. That is creating that cohesion in writing is
Mhm.
it's good practice. And so absolutely.
Okay. Thank you.
So
Okay.
we're just writing on like partner A side if we're partner A.
Right. You and your partner will decide who's A and who's B. And you will write on your side, but then once you've completed a sentence, then you're going to go to your partner's
Okay.
part of the slide and add another sentence, and they'll do the same to you. So it's kind of like ping ponging back and forth.
Okay.
You write a
Right.
sentence. Got it? Yeah, okay, Kevin. Great.
Thank
Okay.
you. Sorry.
I'm gonna drop the link in the chat.
Okay, and I will build the breakout rooms. All right, welcome back, everybody. Lanny, will you hit record again? We're going to
It's
share our. Is it?
it's hit.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect.
So
Perfect.
welcome back. And we saw some very creative writing going on, and we are excited to hear about it. Our next step is we're going to return to our breakouts in order to do a read around. So let's find out what a read around is and see how it works. It basically connects your write around with that you just completed. Okay? And so for our session today, we just have 2 groups. And in your breakout, you are going to read what was written on the last paper you contributed to. And then between the partners, you'll decide which of the 2 papers you like the better. And this will be the one that you will revise. We want you to add a title, a powerful ending, and any additional tier 2 or tier 3 words. If you remember in our if you attended our vocabulary session, some of our tier 2 words from our article was theorize, theory, solution, and then we had tier 3 words that talked about parts of the brain, neocortex and hippocampus. Don't know if you can work those tier 2 or tier 3 words into your writing or something else. Remember, folks, tier 2 words are high utility academic words that cross content areas. Think about words that are connectors, like moreover, therefore. Think about EOG type verbs, analyze, synthesize, evaluate. And then tier 3 words are the words that we typically think about when we teach vocabulary. They're highlighted in the text and they are content based, and you teach them within the context of your lesson. So keeping that in mind, those are that's a little review on tier 2 and tier 3 words. And so you will then prepare to share out with the group. And once you select your favorite one of the 2 pieces, and then you both work on revising it, maybe one of you can type and the other one dictate, however you want to do that, and then just be prepared to share out with our whole group. And we'll work on that for about 6 minutes. And we will check in with you guys, and we will put you back in to your same breakout group, hopefully. Do we have any questions on our read around?
So we're reading it aloud, is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah, to your partner.
To your partner, you'll read yours aloud, and then your partner will read theirs aloud. You 2 will decide jointly which one you want to take, and that resonates with you. It's your favorite, and then you all will add a catchy title. make any revisions, maybe strengthen your vocabulary with some tier 2 and tier 3 words. And then we will check back in with you guys.
Can I just ask, because when I was doing this activity, I was thinking how it will look like in my classroom with the students. From what I understood, you suggest that this activity is done in a group of 4.
Yeah.
So, okay.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
all 4 will have a piece of paper and all 4 will have sentence starters, and then they will switch, right? And then it goes around. And then you say, okay, now you read aloud. So they probably will read aloud. They will decide between themselves. Who is going to be doing the changes? Like, typically what I see happening, one student works while the rest watch YouTube, or I don't know, check their phones. So, any suggestions on how this process usually works? Because, we big girls and boys, so we can handle it. We can say, okay, let's work and let's revise it. How does it work in the group of 4?
Right.
And it doesn't have to be 4. If you've got a lot of distracted students, you can do pairs. You can do this with pairs, and you can do it virtually, like we've modified it for our session here today. But you're going to want to make sure that they have different roles, perhaps, and that maybe one person within the group will be the one to come up with the title or documenting, that they've done the title, and someone else in the group can be more responsible for the ending. But from what I've seen, these groups, I mean, there have even been debates on how that story is going to end. The kids get so invested in middle school, it was insane. um so I would just try it. You know your students best, and you can strategically group your students. So I would actually say try to strategically group your students, and make sure, well, if they've got paper and pencil, there shouldn't be any YouTubing. There shouldn't be any kind of distractedness with technology.
Yeah,
Um,
I tend to use Google
so
Docs. So, but yeah, maybe
yeah,
pencil,
yeah,
paper and
no, I
pencil.
would, handwriting is a lost art. And when I taught middle school, that was like one of my very first lessons was writing the alphabet in print and then in cursive, um, just to make sure that they had that attention to detail and to the fine motor skills, and that they could write legibly, and then the expectation was there. So that because in this case you have to be able to read everybody's handwriting, so that's why they take a minute to read the paper in front of them, because if there's any question about what a word is, they may need to ask someone in their group, hey, did you write this? What is this word? What are you saying here? To be able to continue forward. But
Another thing, oh, I'm sorry, Karen.
no, go ahead, go ahead.
Another thing you can do, Daria, to add in some accountability is either different colored pens if they're on paper,
Hmm.
or if they're on
Yep.
Google Docs, a different color font for each child. And so when it gets to the point of revision, if you want to say, if you want to assign those roles, like you're going to be responsible for the title, and you type it and everyone can put heads together to come up with the title. So it will adding those layers of accountability should help that with establishing those norms.
Yeah, those are good suggestions. Thank you.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, so we're going to have about 6 minutes. Were there any other questions before we put you back in your groups? Okay.
All right.
Okay. All right. Great.
Go.
Welcome back. Welcome back.
Okay. We would love to have a volunteer share out and read your narrative that you selected in your small group of 2, and point out to us uh, the tier 2 and tier 3 words that you added, or anything that you added, connectors perhaps to make it more cohesive. We'd love to hear about it. So, what brave soul would like to share the team narrative.
And I would like to say, first just read your story with prosody and with fluency and expression, like you would want your students to do it. And then tell us, like what your process was. Maybe someone else in the group could share like how you picked additional words to go in or embellishments.
Thank
Okay?
you, Karen.
Yeah.
Come on, brave soul. We
Well,
saw.
I'll jump out. I mean,
Thank you, Annette. We
Thank
saw
you.
great writing.
well, I will tell you, I'm going to give you our process before I do the read, because for us, we were just
Okay.
starting to discuss how to finish it out, because we were talking about how to tie it back into the article,
Mm-hmm.
because of the way it's written. And so I'm going to read it. The title is "My House Too Big?" Most recently, I dreamed about a secret room I discovered in the house we recently purchased that looked shabby. I was excited to learn there was an extra room available, but I dreaded having to refurbish it because of all the work we already had to do on the house. I keep having variations of this dream. Each time it has more rooms and extra stairways, and at first I'm happy to discover extra space. I wonder if my dream is related to the work that goes into making a new house a home. It could be due to the fact that my mom keeps telling me that the house is too big for us. I like the size of my house, though. We chose it because it gives us room to grow in whatever capacity we want.
Awesome.
Beautiful narrative writing, but I do like how you tied it in with the article. Karen and I debated on, did we want to do you create a prompt that would cause you to write informational text, or did we want to do a prompt where you would have to argue about which theory of dreams you thought was most robust? And so we decided to go with the narrative writing, but it's the sky's the limit there with what you can do depending on that prompt.
Awesome.
And Annette, tell us some tier 2 words or tier 3 words that you all added to your narrative.
Actually, we had not gotten to that point, honestly, because we opened up the article because our thought was, to take the narrative but tie it back into the article. And so we were just starting to talk about the part in the article, like benefits of dreaming and how through this process you get kind of a benefit. So yeah, we were just getting to that stage
Yeah.
of things.
Okay. But
Awesome.
beautiful that you took the initiative to go back to the article to tie it in.
Mm-hmm. Good job.
Thank you. Okay.
Okay, and Annette, you were in which group? Were you in group
1, I believe. Was it
We were in team
1?
one.
Yeah.
All right. Let's hear from team 2.
Okay, so team 2, we wrote about an unexpected dream. Most recently, I dreamed about a trip to the mountains. I needed to clear out my mind, and the fresh air in the mountains helped me to do so. The open road was ahead, and I took a deep breath while considering all of the possibilities: hiking, fishing, sitting on the bank of the river. I was scratching my head because it was a difficult decision. Regardless, I decided to be sitting on the bank of the river and enjoyed the view. Then suddenly, a shark emerged out of the water. Panicked, I woke up abruptly. I guess the trip wasn't that relaxing after all.
Oh my goodness. I was there. What great descriptive language.
Absolutely. Lisa, did y'all have the chance to add in any tier 2 or tier 3 words?
We had the list from the first session, and so those are in bold, like scratching my head, regardless, and emerged for some that were written down.
Beautiful.
That we had used, and then Monica had the title, which I think is great, and we just sort of tidied up our ending a little bit.
Lovely.
Nice.
That collaboration is so helpful for ELLs because if you're pairing strategically, as Karen's already alluded to, you can pair a stronger writer with a student who is still developing, and it's so helpful. And even as adults, right, we're all already good writers, and it just helps us to grow as we revise with another head. Two heads are always better than one. Thank you so
Right.
much.
Thank you. I think we liked it because it took the pressure off of us as, individual writers. So that was fun.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, can we hear from group number 3, please?
Of course. So we kind of I'm thinking because at least my thought process was because it was a dream, we kind of went a little wacky. So I hope that's okay.
That's perfect.
Of
But
course.
it says care to try shark. Most recently, I dreamed about dining at a restaurant with my sister and my mother. The restaurant was very fancy as it offered multiple courses. Each course was very unusual. I had never tried shark before this meal. I had never tried eel before either. My mother said she loved eels so much so that she had created a recipe of delicious eel pie. The chef overheard and invited mom to the kitchen. While in the kitchen, the boss of the restaurant saw how my mother was cooking and asked her to be the new head chef.
Oh, I love, Kevin, how you heeded Karen's admonition to read with prosody and fluency. You certainly nailed that one. Um, I love the humor.
Thank you.
And it sounds like one person wrote it. Do y'all hear that? It sounds like one person wrote that whole stream of thought. And that is really awesome when you can get your students to, in that scaffolded environment where they're supporting each other, and they're able to connect one thought to another thought without changing dramatically who's writing what. It all seems to flow into one voice. And that is so, so powerful.
And
Awesome.
Karen, we saw that with the kindergarten writing about Sally. It was amazing
Mm-hmm.
how those kindergartners connected the sentences. And
Exactly.
so you without having tried it, you're kind of like, oh, this couldn't work with kinders, but well, it can. And obviously beautifully with adults for sure. Okay, awesome. So,
What were some of the tier words that y'all added,
So
or the
I
mm-hmm.
wasn't here for, unfortunately, I wasn't here for that first meeting, so I didn't have a list, but I just tried to tweak some things and tried to, for instance, instead of saying like the restaurant was very fancy as it had, I changed it to offered multiple courses. What else
Perfect.
did we change? We just did little tweaks like that.
well, that's
Well, you've got the idea. That's
yeah.
exactly right.
Adding that specificity.
One mm-hmm. One thing I want to bring to your attention, okay, we did this virtually, but when you are doing this in the classroom, um, additionally, when you have your students prepare to share out, you're going to want to make sure that they are practicing. You're going to tell the groups now, make sure that you are supporting the person who's going to share out, that they are going to articulate, they're going to be able to speak clearly and loud enough so that everyone can hear. And this fluency that you want to, if you practice it, you can't just think it. You have to whisper it out loud so that you're getting everything ready in your mouth to be able to produce this language, because it makes such a difference. And then everyone else is going to be listening and prepared to listen. So I purposely didn't read it while you were sharing your stories, because I wanted to try and just listen and just picture it and take it in. But you'll want to have your students do that as well. All right.
Wonderful.
Awesome.
Okay. So
Okay.
let's debrief this. How did we differentiate this activity, or how could we differentiate this activity? How can newcomers be supported?
You know, and I know in every school it's different, and in some schools there are kids from all over the world and they don't have common language. But in my classroom, I want to say most of them, but they are all of them Hispanic.
Mm-hmm.
So they all speak Spanish. So sometimes, I ask some questions. Even though I don't speak Spanish fluently, but they say something, I either look it up in the dictionary, or I catch it, I understand, or friends translate it. And sometimes, like, I can totally see how, if they work together, it's okay for them, especially if it's just pencil and paper and you don't want them to use computers, they can write it in Spanish.
Oh, absolutely.
Because it's still a writing skill that can be transferable. My own experience and the research shows that if they have strong writing skills in their first language, then they will have strong writing skills in their second. They're more likely to have strong writing skills in their second. Of course, you have to teach them explicitly, yada, yada, yada. But it's much easier to transfer those skills than, like some kids who have interrupted education.
Yes.
You have to learn it from scratch. So I don't think it's a big deal if in the very beginning, they use Spanish. And sometimes what I do, I give them my work iPad with Google Translate so they can look up some words, and they copy that. So it's not really that useful, but they understand what they write and they copy and they learn, and they kind of like get in the process, I guess.
Absolutely. Using L1 is I mean, that's how you're going to start with newcomers, and that's okay. And partnering kiddos with the same L1 is just, it's the perfect newcomer strategy.
Well, Daria, I totally understand about letting them write it in their native language and then find ways to translate it or say what they say, because I've seen growth this year with some of they're almost exiting the newcomer stage and it's encouraged them to, well, I mean, it's encouraged them. From what I'm hearing from my content teachers in my school, is they can see where before their EL kids didn't want to try and write and didn't want to do, where now, because we've got this system set up where they can read whatever they need to in Spanish, and then they can write it in Spanish, but then they have to get it, translate it back into English so they know it. That has a comfort level for them that's made a difference in some of their growth. And so, sometimes I think, it's that fine line between, are we creating a comfort level that they know it's okay to make a mistake, it's okay that I sound funny, all of that social ability that's tied into learning that second language. So yeah, Daria, I'd kind of do the same thing with some of mine, is let them, double dip.
Perfect. Thank you for sharing that, Annette.
I think another way we could, a way that we could differentiate even more so, I have in my class on different ends of ability. I have one student, for instance, who's able to write beautifully in Spanish and in English at this point, and then other students who are really I could tell they're trying. But if I was to do this activity, for those students who are lower, I could provide more, I guess you would say like the lower tiers of words, more
Yeah.
words for them, and then for the student who's excelling, I could provide maybe even some tier 3 words that are relevant,
Mm-hmm.
but really providing that, well, like y'all said, the little tints on the table, but
Mm-hmm.
for
Right.
those lower ones, sometimes it would be helpful to provide translations as well, sometimes for those words to use quickly in
Mhm.
writing.
Mhm. Perfect, Kevin. You're right. Differentiated word banks. Yep.
And even some sentence frames that they can fill in. And as you said, on those sentence frames or on the table tents, you can have those word banks and words that are for the unit posted that they can refer to. Powerful way to support our newcomers so that they can also actively participate and grow their language. Awesome ideas.
Thank you, guys. Okay.
Can you see yourselves using this?
Yeah, I see myself using this.
Awesome.
I think it would be very engaging for the students.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I only every time, we have discussion and discussions are done in the group. And then I would say, okay, now it's writing time. And they're like, can we work in a group? And I said, no, because it's an individual assignment, I need to see how you write. Because I couldn't really see how you can do it in the group. The only time I did kind of collaborative writing is when we did the narrate portion. So we did story elements and we learned from a story, and then they had to write their own story. So they kind of separately worked on setting characters and conflict, and then they came together and combined. And so that was kind of this project where I could see them working together. But this is the way that it can be thrown anyway. They can work on informational text like that. They can work on narration as well,
Mhm.
explanation. I could, I don't know, say, okay, explain how, think of your favorite recipe and begin it. And then, it starts going around and they have to. So there are just more options to do with the writing, because my students dread writing and I do that very
Mm-hmm.
often. So I think that's
Mm-hmm.
kind of like a little easier way out. And I liked how someone said here in this group that it took some pressure off of them as an individual writer. So I can see how that could happen.
Even with the
Absolutely.
teachers, right?
Yeah.
And when you lower the affective filter, then they get so into it that they forget that they don't like it. And then you'll hear little giggles or chuckles or, I mean, it's just, it really, because of the support and because you're still controlling the topic and the content, and then you're giving them all these, the scaffolded, like, sequential words or the tier 2 phrases that's going to raise the level up in that challenging, like, how many of these words can you add in now, where does it make sense? They're going to forget that they don't like to write, I promise. All right, great
Okay.
feedback.
Yes.
I
And
have
so,
a question real quick before we leave this particular piece,
okay.
and
Sure.
just understanding the writing process itself.
Mm-hmm.
How, because it's a fun experience to kind of get the creative juices flowing,
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
but I don't know how to, I'm trying to figure out how to even ask my question. I guess it's just, how does it fit in helping them understand the parts and steps of the writing process? That is it a brainstorming activity we just did? You see what I'm saying? So they understand what component of the writing process that they're practicing as well. Am I making sense?
Sure. I mean, I think that it's like on that slide earlier, how the with the writing process, you're going back and forth and back and forth, that you've got your initial draft, you've got your vocabulary you're putting in, then you're going to revise, you're going to go back again, you're doing all of this, and it goes back and forth and back and forth until you have your finished product. So if you have a poster in your room or an anchor chart or something that you can refer back to, you can even have the students say, okay, now where do you think we are, guys, in this when you've done this? Because is it finished? Are you finished yet? Are you ready to publish? You know, and have them process through all of that and see that no, the first time you do a draft, it's not finished. How many think it's finished? Do your students ever even read what they've written? They think it's done? Mine didn't. Mine never did. They wrote it. Okay, there you go. I'm like, okay,
Yeah,
read it to a
spot on.
partner.
Yeah.
You know, then when they read it to a partner, they couldn't even read like past two sentences, and they were like, wait, and they'd start changing things because they realized that what they thought they had written did not get captured on the paper, just in reading it aloud to somebody else. So, making them aware of where they are in that process, you can do that explicitly when you refer to that, or just having them read it and reread it as they are building that prosody to be able to present it to out to the whole group where there's a higher level of interest and accountability, um, is where they're going to be developing more of their knowledge base, more of their fluency, their prosody, and everything. Where does it fall exactly into the writing process is going to be dependent on where you are with where you want them to be in what stage you're at, if that makes sense.
Right. Right. What you just experienced was drafting, and the
Hmm.
having the writing prompt designed like it is, and you see how Karen and I designed it to guide you all into narrative writing. It really takes some of that brainstorming piece out of the equation. But you all were drafting, and then we went back in and we revised. And so now we're going to look at another strategy where students revisit their writing that Dr. Calderon has developed. And it's called ratiocination. And that's a strategy where students revisit their writing in order to make their papers better. It's explicit and systematic. And through ratiocination, teachers teach and students apply the specific skills and context. The teacher guides students in each item. Students are responsible for checking their own paper. And this really helps reduce the grading load or the editing load for the teacher. And so you can have checklists for narratives, for informational writing, for expository writing, explanatory and argumentative. There are various things you can check their papers for, and it's going to be things that you think are important for their writing. You know where they are. So, overuse of the verb to be, for example, subject verb agreement, verb tenses, capitalization. It's whatever purpose you choose for that particular writing task. And it may involve many lessons. And so let's take a look at ratiocination, an example. So I might have my class circle the first word in every sentence and then have them decide, are they going to keep it or are they going to change it? Do they need a transition word or a connector or maybe a more specific vocabulary word? I'm going to have my students underline tier 1 words and have them decide to keep it or replace with tier 2. I've got those tier 2 words from our reading posted up on the board or in an anchor chart where they can reference those. Use a triangle around punctuation marks. That way, if you have your classic, everything is a big run-on sentence, this exercise of ratiocination by using a triangle around the periods or exclamation point or whatever is going to really highlight to the kiddos, am I ending my sentences with appropriate punctuation marks? And then you might use a rectangle with to be verbs and decide, do you want to keep it? Do you want to change it to an active verb, or is it just fine? And these are just examples. And it's really, it's systematic. It's fun for them to go through, and it's very explicit. They know exactly what to do. You're circulating while they are doing their ratiocination on their papers. You've modeled it for them, though, with another narrative that maybe you have done with the class, so that they understand what to do.
And you could also do this with your write around and have them, because they all have a piece of paper in front of them that has that composition, and you could have them all look at their write around and have them do this same exercise as well. And I've even seen teachers have the students use highlighters for the very shortest sentences. Um, and then that leads us to the next strategy called cut and grow. And in a cut and grow, you will need to have scissors, and you'll need to have that right around or some kind of composition that they have worked on. And so the first thing they're going to do is in their composition, determine where there is something, area that's weak. And then they're going to use scissors to cut apart the composition. So it could be that they had a 3-word sentence, or maybe in their explanation of something, they realized they left out a whole step. So they're going to take those scissors and physically cut across the composition and have their paper in 2 parts. Then they're going to edit by elaborating, adding adjectives and adverbs. Maybe they need to redefine something or explain further using more tier 2 and tier 3 words on another piece of paper. And a colored piece of paper is really great because then it'll really pop when you can see that edit. Then you are going to have them prepare a volunteer to read their new embellished piece to the class. And they've got to practice reading. They have about 10 minutes to prepare and then 1 to 2 minutes to read. And this way, it gets them again diving back into the content, back into their compositions to do even further editing and revision just when they thought they had it already done, right? That first draft just was not enough. So this is an example of what that looks like, or what it could look like. So this was something that on Excel, and you can see where they had the original piece written, and then they cut it apart and added more sentences on the colorful paper. And they added the title, they added a conclusion. Overall, the entire composition is a little bit weak, but it's a very good graphic for how you actually cut the paper apart. And then this is what teachers are posting in the room or in the halls, where you don't have a finished product that's, typed in pretty, though there's a place for that. Absolutely. I love to see published work. But how powerful it is to see how students have gone in and taken an original composition and then embellished it, added to it, clarified, added that academic vocabulary to something that is truly exceptional. Okay, and another strategy.
Okay. So we've covered the write around. We did a read around. You all revised with adding a title, tier 2 and tier 3 words. Karen shared, I shared with you the strategy of ratiocination, a further tool to revisit your students' writing. And then Karen shared cut and grow. So now we want to share another writing strategy with you. You may well be familiar with the raft strategy. And so this is something that Dr. Calderon recommends as well. So, as a role, who are you as a writer? Who is your audience? Who are you writing to? What form will your writing take? It doesn't have to be an essay. And what's the subject or content area? It can be so varied, and it is much more enjoyable for students. You'll want to model it before you assign students to raft. But if you'll take a moment and look at these examples of raft assignments, and I'll just give you a moment to peruse the slide. And you can see how we've woven in content standards with the writing. And I'd like to also point out that you can add another T and add technology like a green screen or doing Google Slides, a Prezi, what have you, is another option you can take. So we'd love to hear from you. If you have previously done a raft assignment with your students, we'd love to hear about it. Or if there is a particular raft strategy on our slide that really resonates with you that you might like to try with your students, we'd love to hear from you.
So I have a question. Is this like what you give them in the beginning? So is this kind of like a prompt before they start write? Like at which point do you introduce this raft activity?
Well, you're going to model it for them, right? And so you're going to create, you might have created a travel guide through the solar system, and you're teaching third graders. And so you would want to model that for them, and you could get it started. You could do it on an anchor chart, and then students could finish on their own creating a travel brochure.
So this is introduced in the very beginning before the write around takes place.
This is not
Okay, it would
connected
be
to the write
separate.
around. This is a separate writing strategy.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so this is another writing strategy that Dr. Calderon teaches with Excel writing. So we did focus, right? That was why I recapped, Daria. We did our write around, we did the read around, we added a title, tier 2, tier 3 words. Then we talked about further ways you could revise the write around with ratiocination or cut and grow. And then the raft is just a different writing strategy altogether. It's not connected to the write around.
Okay, because I remember you said that this rationalization could happen to this raft.
It can
And I
happen to
was
any type of
wondering,
writing.
okay, now it kind of makes sense. So after they finish writing, then you can do that cut and then they can, okay.
And depending on what your content is, like I know elementary teachers, you teach everything, right? So if you might use a write around in your ELA, and then maybe over in social studies you might, or science, you might have them do a raft assignment. And then because you're teaching about weather, you might have different aspects of weather where it has the T for topic. On the end, it would have different different weather topics in that area of which that you're speaking. Like you might have evaporation, or you might have uh, some form of precipitation, a blizzard or something. You would have some kind of topic as it pertains to your content, but then you would have different choices that they could choose from to be able to write on that topic or that content. What, depending on, or if you're studying points of view, you would have you would really focus on what the roles are that they're going to be taking as they're doing their point of view, to really step in empathetically, what are, and from a knowledge base of that kind of person, how would that person talk? Or if you were focusing on the format, let's say you have different genres, you've been talking about different, like folk tales or different um poetry or lyrics or something. And so you would focus on your format that you want the students to write, or letter writing, I mean, so it depends on whatever you are wanting to achieve with your students, how you would modify a raft options board, choice board for your students. It could work with any content area, but it is separate completely from a write around.
Right.
Does that help?
And it's just this is
Yes,
to
yes.
help you come up with a variety of ways for your students to write, so they're not like, you know, we're not writing an essay, we're doing a travel brochure, or we're creating an infographic with facts about tornadoes. It brings some joy to the writing process. And Annette, you're right, it's almost like a choice board for writing.
Well, and a thought
Mhm.
I had to take it one step into the unknown is almost have like your RAFT in boxes where they pick and they don't know exactly what they're going to pick out of the box.
Yeah.
You could.
You
You
could.
really could. I love that.
Yep.
Nice. A way to gamify it. Any questions about RAF before we move on? Okay. Our last strategy today that we're going to look at is called Rip and Write. In the classroom, you would have groups of 3 to 4, and they're going to rip sheets of different colored construction paper. So usually you can have each person get a half a sheet or a whole sheet, depending on your access to resources, right? And then they're going to look and see what the pieces that they've just ripped, no scissors allowed, create and then write a story after they've compared their shapes. And they're going to paste their pieces beside the story and share their story. Some examples of what this might look like are shown here. So usually they do it on chart paper, but again, you make it fit to whatever you can. One over here is on your summer vacation, and they had all these, it looks like very strategically torn pieces of paper. And over here, not as much. They really layered their paper to make it fit. So you're kind of you're just opening up and accessing that creative side of the brain to be able to do something completely different that they've never done before, for most part, and putting it together to with whatever topic you want them to do. Now, if you're going to emphasize the story elements, maybe you want them to just make sure that they've got a character setting plot, um, and that some kind of narrative or some kind of storyline. It may be that you are finishing your unit in 5th grade. You want them to pick a biome to represent, and they have to look at their shapes and say, oh, okay, well, that looks like a lizard. Maybe that looks like a cactus. We can fit this together for that desert biome. And then they're going to make a story about that. So you've given them some kind of purpose and some kind of direction. And then they create this together. So then they've got everybody participating. Now, this is going to require a little bit more. They're going to need to have the paper, they're going to need to have um, uh, markers or something to write with. And then they're going to need to be able to have that time to create. But again, they're like, we're going to do what? And it can be fiction, nonfiction, whatever you want to make it. It is so amazing, the creativity in what they are able to come up with. So I don't think we're going to have time to do a full breakout. So, Lanny, let's you and I model this.
Okay.
Okay. Do you have a paper handy?
I do.
Um,
And so, oh, let me get a
okay.
different color from you. So,
Okay.
so our prompt is going to be the same prompt as you guys had the other night. I dreamed about. And so I can either be strategic about my ripping, like I know, okay, I want to create a cloud. So I'm going to try to rip it like a cloud, or you can just be free and rip it however you want and then look at it and decide what it should be. Oftentimes, when I do this with teachers, I see them ripping shapes to match characters and setting. That's often typical. So I know that I
Are
want to
you,
create
you
a
got yours?
cloud.
Okay, so I've ripped mine and it could go a couple of different ways. Mine, I kind of see a rocket, maybe. Or if I kind of turn it this way, I think it kind of looks like a horse.
So
And
Karen, we could have had a dream about a rocket or a horse.
I just messed up my horse. I'm really sad. So, yeah, my horse is like a really skinny horse now. I took his muzzle out.
It
But
takes
anyway,
a
he's
lot of
going to still be a horse.
collaboration.
But I like, the example that we showed because you can actually, oh, and you do need glue or scissors or, I mean, glue, not no scissors, glue or tape for the students to be able to do this. Okay, so I can just put a little muzzle back in there and I can draw an eyeball on there and draw some nostrils. And then, so we have a story about, you had a dream about a horse and you were going somewhere. I've got some pieces that they kind of look like triangles, so we could put them on our paper and they could be the mountains. Maybe they're going mountains. Oh, Lanny, I know what we could do. We can also talk about, and this is, y'all, is totally off the cuff. Uh, in that dream article we read about, and they talked about one of the theories was like you might be working through something in your dreams.
Mhm.
So we could even pull in maybe from something like that, that in the dream, you were the horse and you didn't know there was some kind of challenge or obstacle you were facing, and you realized maybe it was something, some kind of challenge at work or something, and that you were making it over the mountain, and we could make that our story or something like that. What do you
Mhm.
think?
That's exactly where I was going in my head, Karen. So that's perfect. And so you're going to assign jobs as well. Like if you're doing it on chart paper for a small group, then you're going to need a scribe. And obviously you need to model this. This is a fun writing activity, and you can actually write about content. It does not have to be narrative fictional writing.
Okay, so had we the time to do this activity, this is what you are going to do. What Lanny and I just modeled for you. You would be taking your paper, ripping it, sharing with your group. So you can say what you think it kind of looks like, what they think it looks like. What kind of storyline are you going to come up with? What kind of topic are you doing? And then including that setting, characters, and plot. And then you would write your story and share it out. And then again, as the teacher, you would be going around and modeling, or not modeling, but asking, okay, remember those words on the board, you can use some of those. Um, this is an activity that that can get messy. There's paper all around. So you want to have all of those kinds of things in place so that you, whether you're in a 90-minute block in middle school or in elementary and you've got to go to lunch, that you want to make sure you include that time to clean up before you before they move on to the next content area or whatever activity or class that they're going to next. But what do you think about this? Do you have any questions? A kid is do you have an idea of how this might look in your classroom and if you might be able to do this?
Annette
It's been
shared.
I was gonna say it's been an eon since I did this because this is way back before I was even a teacher when I was a TA. But the kids loved it. Now you had to keep them focused on the topic, and they were littles at the time, but they absolutely loved it. And I think for me, as I think about it, I'm like, I think the hardest thing, because I'm now at middle school stage, would be getting them to embrace that imagination again.
Yeah.
To see you have a blank piece of paper, tear it in the shape you need to have. But I I have nothing but positive on this because it's been years since I've done anything like it. But yeah, it was a good one.
You know, Annette, I think the challenge is more for the teachers to allow that type of thing in middle school because the kids, they kind of pretend to be too big to care, too cool for school and for these types of activities. But really, if you only give them a chance to do anything like that, they are all over it. They really, because they don't really have chance to do that much because the moment they enter middle school, every single teacher thinks, okay, these are big kids, we need to do this EOG. So we need to do the writing, we need to do the reading. And this creative element kind of gets lost. And it's very rarely that they get to do these types of things. I think I can totally see how my students would, I mean, of course, because of the mess and everything, I'm not going to do that often. But I can totally see how I could incorporate it. And after reading a difficult passage, say, okay, I need your summary on this passage. So you have to illustrate it and then you label it. Because otherwise, sometimes the passages are so difficult, they're lost. They're like, what are we reading about? Are we reading about aliens? Are we reading about Christopher Columbus? Are we reading about the World War II? And I'm trying to explain, well, the aliens arrived and the people who watched them were compared to the Indians and the spaceship were compared to the warships. So, and I'm like, how do I put it in their head so they're not lost? And I'm thinking, well, that would be a good thing, when you ask them to illustrate this story and then you kind of, I don't know, either write it or label it even, for lower level students. If they cannot write it, they can just label it.
Point well made. That's a great way to differentiate it, Daria. Anybody
Or
else?
you could have them select their favorite section of the book or the story, and or they could extend the story in some way. Looking at a timeline, even if you're doing the Revolutionary War, or you're doing a biography about Abraham Lincoln, and to take his timeline and then extend it somehow in some area. The sky's the limit. You can modify this in all sorts of ways, but it's using the manipulatives. It's when, and I find this true with middle schoolers as well. When the technology's closed, when it's put to the side, they know it's off limits, and they just kind of go into that other mode. What we grew up with kind of mode, because they no longer have access to it, so they're all in then at that point. So
Point well made.
very valid point, though.
Yeah, absolutely. And adults love to do this. It's so engaging. Okay.
Okay. So, any other thoughts about how this activity could be differentiated, or how our newcomers could be supported, or um,
Question: is this something,
yes.
because I'm thinking ahead as to, because one of the goals I had this year that was to really make sure I don't know what else to say, but kind of addressing my content teachers with things that they can use in their classrooms. And so I feel like what I've gained today are things that I can take to them and say, okay, you got XYZ going on, because at my school, my newcomers are not in, they're not in the sheltered ELA class. They are in the regular classroom. And so there's a lot of my
I see.
teachers that, you know, until we get some scheduling and things shifted and stuff in the next couple of years, that's kind of how it is. But I feel like things I've gotten today, because I'm familiar enough with it, I'm wondering if my other colleagues that it's like, oh, I've used this in other ways, didn't realize I could use it for an EL kid. Because I feel like for me, I'm like, I feel like I've gotten things today I can take to my teachers. You know, I get something out of it, but I feel like I can pass it on as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I'm so encouraged to hear that, Annette. It's powerful when you see a way that you can readily apply what you've learned in in a workshop. So that's awesome.
You know, Annette,
But
I
not
think
only
you
for yourself, but for your teachers.
Mhm.
Yeah. Your content teachers too. I think that's very powerful.
sorry. I think you raised one very important point, saying that, you know, you kind of feel it's unfair that the students have to go through the written tests and the other students don't. And I was thinking about it, that if this access test was administered throughout the whole school, then I would have ended up with many more ESL students. So I think this technique is great. You know, you'll bring it to the content teachers, but not as, hey, this is what you can do with newcomers. This is what you can do with any struggling student or any other student who is bored and
Exactly.
doesn't want to be in the classroom anymore, because we keep our students in their seats for so many hours without breaks, without
Mhm.
recess. And I think this is a great activity to shift, you know, the focus, yet it's not really watered down. It's not like, hey, we're doing, I don't know, throw a
Right.
ball back and forth, that it doesn't do anything to our brain. I think that's another point that, you know,
Exactly.
can be shown to the content teachers.
Right. And
Thank you,
Rip and
Daria.
Write,
Very good.
yes. Rip and Write can lend itself to any content area. So like we said earlier, it doesn't have to just be narrative. And so let's take a look and see if we met our objectives today. We first talked about right around, and you experienced that in your breakouts. Then we went back to breakouts. You did a read aloud, added a catchy title, added tier 2 and tier 3 words. Then we looked at another editing tool, ratiocination, and we looked at cut and grow, again, another tool for revising, and then a completely different writing strategy of raft, which is like a smorgasbord of different approaches to writing that are more fun. And then finally, Karen shared with you about the rip and write, and you guys, several of you have done it before, and I think that we've learned lots of writing strategies that Dr. Calderon teaches us within the Excel framework that are intuitive and really moves your students and grows your students' writing without their feeling so tortured.
Definitely. Hopefully they don't feel tortured. We would like you to take a moment. This is our last session of our 3 sessions to do the exit ticket. I'm not sure, you might be able to access this in your digital journal. But if not, Lanny, could you drop that in the chat, please?
Yes, I will.
So that we can get that. We did not get the session 2 on the reading in the chat uh before many of you had already left last week. So if you have a chance and you can access that in your digital journal and give us some feedback on that session 2, that would be great for us, just so that we know if this series has been helpful, if it's giving you new strategies and tools to use in your classroom for your ELLs. And then once you have done your exit ticket, we invite you to contact us. Let us know if you have any further questions or clarifications. And our Title III team is listed on our final slide there for you. But we just want to say thank you so much for being part of this. And we feel free to unmute if you have any questions or would like clarifications, and Lanny and I'll stick around for the next couple of minutes. But it's been a pleasure getting to know you and work with you on these sessions.
Thank you, April. She says, thank you, very helpful. You're welcome, Lisa. Thank you for joining us. Oh, such a nice compliment. Monica says it was amazing. Daria says, so grateful. Thank you so much. Can't wait to implement those strategies in my unit. ExC ELL is my absolute favorite framework to support English learners, and as we also pointed out, all learners. Thank you. Have
Right.
a great day. Successful end of the year, you too. Everybody,
Thanks, Daria.
have a good evening. Thank you for your kind comments, Pilar. We really appreciate your time and attention and all the fascinating
Said it was
content
excellent.
that you guys shared with us.
Awesome. Okay. And Laney, if you want to stop the recording, I think that's great.